Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today is Wednesday, 28th of May 2025, and all eyes are on NVDA earnings, and they prepare to release the Q1 fiscal 2026. After the market closed today, given Nvidia pivotal role in the AI and semiconductor sector, this report is highly anticipated by everybody. Everybody is talking about it, so let's dive into what we can expect from that earnings. Stay tuned. So analysts are projecting strong growth for Nvidia this quarter. Revenue approximately 43.28 billion, representing a 66% increase year over year. Earnings per share of around $0.86 per share. These figures underscore the surge in demand for AI technology and Nvidia's dominant position in the market. However, it's not all smooth sailing. Nvidia is expecting to address a significant 5.5 billion charge related to US restrictions to its H20 chips to China. This write-down could impact gross margin and investor sentiment, of course. NVDA performance is a bellwether in the tech sector, so the company result could influence the broader market trends. So the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and the overall US equity market. We know NVIDIA is very critical to the market sentiment and to the momentum of this bull market. So investor will be keenly watching for all signs of how NVIDIA is navigating the current challenges of the tariffs of Donald Trump era. On the innovation front, NVIDIA continue to push boundaries, expect updates on the AI initiatives, including advancements in AI factories and potential development in the GPU architectures. These areas are crucial for NVIDIA long-term growth and market leadership. To wrap up, NVIDIA upcoming earnings report is more than just numbers. It's a glimpse into the future of AI and technology, and we will be covering the earnings release after the market close today. So make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Tomorrow I will make a full update of the earnings of NVDA. I will attend live the earnings. So thanks for watching and stay tuned. Now we are going to review some of the very key commentators on CNBC and what the market is saying about NVDA earnings of today market close. Stay tuned. Let's watch it and let's comment what they're saying. So let's start with this first comment on NVIDIA result for tomorrow and what investor can expect from these earnings.
Video reporting results tomorrow as concerns around tariffs and AI dominance loom. Joining us right now is Chris Casso. He is Wolfe Research senior analyst. What are we looking for? What are you mostly, I assume the biggest thing is just going to be how much capital they continue to spend and what kind of orders they're getting, because it will say something about the ecosystem and the larger economy, Chris.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And, all the indications so far is that, capital spending has been very strong. Demand for AI has been very strong. We certainly expect management to address that. On the numbers for the quarter, the big issue is the China export restrictions that have been in place. And, we have that dialed in a little over a $5 billion per quarter revenue impact. The street understands that. Buy side investors understand that. The sell side's been a little slow to adjust numbers. So, there is some estimate risk just because of where the estimates are. But, the other issue is, the question is the ramp of these new projects, the GB200. But, we think the setup is for a very strong second half as a result of that.
How does whatever's going on with NVIDIA, you think, relate to everybody else? Did you say to yourself that if they got great numbers, AMD's got great numbers?
Well, AMD's in a little bit of a separate situation. They also had the China issue this last quarter, and numbers came down as a result of that. But in the case of AMD, it's really a question of, they also have a new product coming in the second half of the year, and they're the number 2 guy in the market. So and the other factor is that most of these hyperscalers are also doing their own custom chips as well. So, the question really is kind of on one side, it's NVIDIA being the leader and, they're going to be the main beneficiary of demand in our view. On the other side, it's these custom chips and how much they ramp up. And for AMD, it's more of a question of kind of being in the middle and how much demand is left for them with those two things on the edge.
Because we had Andy Jassy on the broadcast, I want to say We're now in May. I think at the beginning of June.
Actually, this is very critical what he was actually saying about the difference between when you're playing NVDA and AMD. AMD is the second biggest player in AI chip market, but is far, far, far smaller than NVDA. NVDA will take almost all the market for AI chip for a long time. But having said that, AMD is coming from a lower and much lower valuation standpoint and lower expectation standpoint, which means that even if they manage to grab 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or even 10% of what NVIDIA is doing right now, or the growth of the AI market or the chip market, then is enough for AMD to triple or quadruple or quintuple the market value within the next 5 years. And this is why I'm heavily invested in AMD. AMD, you can easily see a 5 times or 6 times or 7 times what you're going to do in the next 5 years. But for NVIDIA, can you really expect a 5 times in the next 5 years? I don't think so. So I think that NVIDIA for sure is the dominant player in AI chip market, but AMD is the very critical challenger. And it doesn't need AMD to do as much or as well as NVIDIA to really make a good investment over the next 5 years. It just needs to make a better market share or a better competitive market and to grasp significant growth into the earnings and sales and profitability and so on. So it's enough for the earning per share to grow by double digit over the next five years and to have a huge valuation. I mean, today AMD is about 115, but you can expect AMD over the next 5 years between $300 and $500 easily if it just managed to play well the challenger position. And that's very important. NVDA to grow or to double within the next 5 years, it needs to play the perfect growth story, and it has no room for error. I mean, it's priced for perfection, but offshore, of course, that NVDA is unchallenged so far, and then will be difficult to challenge, but it's not impossible. But so far, NVDA is a giant and is taking the whole market, close to 90% going to NVDA. Let's continue.
And one of the things we talked about was just the need to get the cost of these chips a lot lower. I mean, not just by half, but even more than that. And that's something that in Amazon and some others that are trying to make custom chips are trying to do. How quickly do you think that happens? And obviously that would erode margins eventually for NVIDIA, or do you think that's not in the cards?
Well, what NVIDIA is trying to do is also kind of lower the cost of compute. And, the way we see it between these custom projects and what NVIDIA does, it's really a race to efficiency, primarily power efficiency, because these things consume so much power. And then it's more about not just the price for the chips, but how much compute you get for each for each chip. We did actually a return analysis last week, and what we were finding was for a GB200 data center, 100 megawatt data center, the return in our base case assumption was about 38% over a 5-year period. So actually, what we're finding is actually the returns for the business models here are very strong. I agree, driving the cost down is really important because demand is going up so much. But right now, it's actually a pretty good value proposition even today.
So as you probably understood that NVDA, although that there are a lot of talk about custom-made chips or the competitors doing this and that, I mean, we know that NVIDIA is still far ahead of the competition, whatever competition you have. And he was talking about the return on the investment they're making on these huge data center and AI centers. And it's still highly profitable with NVIDIA chips. So NVIDIA is not going to stop to make money because it's very difficult to compete with them. And people need to understand that. All of the talk about AMD and Broadcom and all these in-house chip development with Amazon or Tesla or whatsoever, they are very good projects, but they cannot replace NVIDIA today and probably not in the foreseeable futures. It doesn't mean that in 5-10 years they will not be able to, but NVIDIA is such an advanced technology that is very difficult to replace, especially for the high-performing data center that they are building today. And what they want also is what they discuss is the energy efficiency of the chips. And NVIDIA is probably at the forefront of all these technology and efficiency measures in the market. So it's very difficult to do better than NVIDIA right now. So that's why NVIDIA will be the leader for the foreseeable futures. But it's just not about what they're going to be the leader. It's about the valuation of the company and what is baked in already in the share price. So that's what we're going to see after the market close. If that what the NVIDIA expectation or NVIDIA guidance is enough to run the price to break out. If you look at the share price, of NVDA, you can see that we are trading sideways for quite a long time right now, because you can look at this. We are trading sideways since we break out in May 2024. So it's almost a year that NVIDIA is going nowhere, you know. You see, May 2024 has been trading between 90 and 150. Always up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Now it's again there. So what are we going to see right now, you know? If you look at the Bollinger Bands, we are almost at the top of the Bollinger Band upper side. So is NVIDIA going to be able to go to all-time high, which is about 150, and break out above 150? All will depend on the guidance of NVIDIA earnings. It's not going to be about whether they beat or not earning per share and revenue, and by how much. Is that really the guidance for the futures, you know? And the Chinese market is critical for NVIDIA. So let's look at another video that can be.
Nvidia shares jumping more than 3% today as the chip giant gets ready to report earnings in less than 24 hours. And there's a lot to watch for in tomorrow's report. The company warned last month it will take a charge of up to $5.5 billion because of export controls on sending its H20 chip to China. The stock virtually flat this year. So what should we be watching in Nvidia earnings? A number of analysts on the street have already said that the impact from China and the export restrictions are not factored into consensus. So there's some expectation that that will be a miss there.
Yeah, I was talking to Gene Munster about this earlier today from Deepwater Asset Management. He'll probably be on the show tomorrow night or sometime this week to talk about it. I mean, you know, this $15 billion in lost sales is probably the big thing that people are focused on. And I think that's what you just said in general. I mean, he did, Jensen, allude to that. But what does it mean for guidance going forward? And I think the knee-jerk could be if you see lower than expected revenue guidance that people will sell, but then you might have them explain it on the call. So it's going to be one of those sorts of tricky calls. The one thing I'll just say is, like, here we are a month after, a few weeks after, all their major customers other than OpenAI and XAI have given their or confirmed their CapEx, and it really wasn't a problem for NVIDIA. People weren't expecting that, greater than expected, or even if it just come in softer, what they were kind of perceiving it might be going forward. So NVIDIA is probably in a perfectly fine spot because they're not going to guide down. We can feel pretty comfortable about that. If there's some concern about whatever that $15 billion in lost sales is, well, that would be the thing that people are going to look past at some point.
Do you think that the China business NVIDIA should be effectively written down to zero?
No.
In other words, will the export restrictions be enough to actually really damage their standing in China? They have to cede competition. I mean, in the past 4 years, they've gone from 95% market share to 50% market share in 4 years.
All right, so let me rethink it a little bit. Yeah. So you write it down to zero, then,
what is the value?
Was $90 that write down to zero, or are we here now? So I think, you know what, that's fair. And I don't think $135 is the right price, but the CEO, has been speaking seemingly nonstop for the last 3 weeks. So just about anything you want.
Gensanity.
Did you just come up with that?
Well, no. I can't take credit, but I'm the only one using it, so I'm gonna,
No, take it.
I'm the guy right now on Gensanity.
My sense is anything you wanted to glean, you've been able to do over the last couple of weeks. So to me, it comes down to what are they going to talk about in terms of the back half of this year for margins? They promised they'd reaccelerate. We need to hear that.
Yeah, so you mentioned tariff and export controls. I think drilling into this $15 billion number, I think if it's all taken up front and made very clear that this is essentially a sunken cost, then I think it speaks to the fact that they don't think that there's going to be any wiggle room in terms of tariff and export controls. I think any leniency in that regard lends one to believe that perhaps that they think that this thing might oscillate back and forth. I think ultimately that's a positive for the stock.
Okay, so as you understood from these two videos and what we have actually recapped for NVIDIA earnings, the most important for this video is to retain that the guidance will be critical to NVDA direction of the share price. And most importantly, NVDA guidance will be, the NVIDIA earning will be the most important things that people are going to scrutinize for the direction of the technology sector, but the S&P 500 and other sectors, because this is what we call the AI trend and the AI investment thesis and what all the hype is about AI. And this is a key driver of the market bull trend right now. So we cross the finger that NVDA earning will be good. Guidance will be good or better than expected, because if it's just good and in line with expectation, it's not going to be enough to propel the market higher than it is today. What it needs to do is to surprise the market with a better guidance than expected and better numbers than expected. So that's very important to understand, because sometimes you have good numbers, you beat expectation, but the stock betrays back. We've seen that over the previous quarters of NVDA earnings. Remember, for 1 year right now, we have had nothing at all. The stock hasn't moved at all. It just range bound traded for almost for 1 year. So just be mindful about that. Thanks so much for watching, and talk to you after NVIDIA earnings tomorrow. So stay tuned, subscribe, and press the like button to help me grow this channel.